Shalom. I would like to give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Kakadash, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and peace to the hopeful light scattered abroad at the full corners of the earth. So, as we all should know, Trump put a 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs. I have it right here. Trump announced his 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs with the exception of China. And so last I saw, the tariff percentage rate is at 125%. Here it is right here. China hikes tariffs on U.S. goods to 125%, hitting back at Trump. So it's an all-out tariff war that's going on. However, Trump put a 90-day pause on all the other tariffs, except for with China. So for some reason, Trump is singling out China for now. So what's going to happen once the 90-day pause is up? I mean, could this be the last summer? Because once the tariffs kick in, that's going to cause the price of goods to go up. Clothes, sneakers, food, electricity, water. I mean, everything, really. So, this may look like Trump has good intentions on the surface level, but when you think about it, it doesn't make any sense what he's doing right now. Because the various corporations left years ago for a reason. So, with putting tariffs on various countries, do you think that that's going to bring corporations back to the U.S.? When, like I said, they left for a reason. Because they have a much cheaper overhead expense, operating outside of the U.S. Because in the U.S., you're going to have to pay people more money. You're going to have to pay people's health insurance, benefits, sick time. You know what I'm saying? And on top of that, nobody's going to work 7 days a week in a sweatshop in the U.S. like they do in China. Let's just be for real. That's the type of stuff they get away with overseas. And that's why they had incentives to leave the U.S. So, this ain't the 60s or the 70s, which really like the 70s was like the last era of when, corporations were operating in the U.S. But again, that they left so that they can make more profit and have a less higher overhead expense. So this isn't gonna end well. And so it's gonna be interesting to see what happens once the 90 days is up. We see what's going on with China. They're at 125% rate with the tariffs, and China doesn't have any intent of backing down because really they don't need the U.S. anymore. They've already made their money. And so what I believe is that Trump is deliberately destroying the economy in order for the elites to justify bringing in their digital system, because there's going to be a reset, and there has to be. So I just have a scripture I would like to read. This is 2 Ezra 16:1. Woe be unto thee, Babylon and Asia. Woe be unto thee, Egypt and Syria. So these are code names for America, Babylon, Egypt, because the U.S. embodies all of these places spiritually in a modern day time. Verse 2, gird up yourselves with cloths of sack and hair, bewail your children, and be sorry, for your destruction is at hand. Right, because America has sold their youth down the line. You see, Gen Z has no hope of owning a house or buying a house. You see, all of people's lives they've been told to go to school, go to college, get a degree, end up in some debt, and maybe or hopefully you'll find a job within your field and you'll be able to pay back your debt. But people are starting to realize that that's not the way to go. So, with the cost of living increasing and rising, and interest rates being high, it's getting even harder for people to maintain and live in this current system. And so that is one of the reasons why I believe that this economy is really being sabotaged. And the tariffs are really one of the final nails in the U.S.'s coffin, because it doesn't logically make sense to just of come out off the gate with tariffs when you have no plan or strategy or infrastructure in place for these corporations to return. I mean, these corporations have no intent on coming back. They don't want to invest in the infrastructure in the U.S. It's going to cost a lot of money, and then on top of that, they would have to train individuals on how to work within these factories. You think Americans want to work 7-day work weeks? Because that's what it is over there in China. They don't get days off. They work 7 days. I don't know if they work doubles or if they just do 8-hour shifts. However, what we do know is that them people over there are miserable. Them people don't like working in them factories, but they have to do it. And so, you think Americans want to deal with that? I mean, they would have to pay at least, the average American, they would have to pay at least like $50 an hour or $75 an hour to work in them factories and them sweatshops. Because it's that bad over there that they got them type of foreign people doing those jobs. You know what I'm saying? Because they've been conditioned their whole lives to do that. Whereas America, I mean, you could say that America had a good stretch, like maybe like the 50s or the 60s. But when things really started going downhill was the 70s, because you had drug problems, economic problems. You had towns that were even thriving off of industries like steel and making rubber tires, and they had a high population within those towns. But once those corporations left, there was no reason for people to remain in those towns. So now these towns nowadays are like ghost towns. Their population has dwindled. So I see the same thing going on with the U.S. People are gonna realize that it's it's really not beneficial to invest in the U.S. and retire here, because we already saw what happened with people's 401k plans with these tariffs, and we saw what happened with the stock market. It crashed. So with people losing money in 401k and inflation not stopping, I mean, how are you gonna be able to afford to retire? Let's just say this bull keeps rolling. How are people gonna afford to live and retire in the U.S.? Which is why there has to be a reset. And so, with these tariffs, it's just a way of controlling the demolition. Just bringing it down. Destroying the economy in order for them to justify bringing in a new digital system. Because it can't be for no other reason. Because, again, do you really think that these corporations are going to come back and operate in the U.S.? They left for a reason, man. So, Where was I? I'll start at verse 2. Gird up yourselves with cloths of sack and hair. Bewail your children and be sorry, for your destruction is at hand. A sword is sent upon you, and who may turn it back? A fire is sent among you, and who may quench it? And the sword and the fire is a representation of the destruction. And so America is losing financially, economically, socially, and even morally. You see, right now, it's a tariff war with China, but eventually it's going to turn nuclear. And so, also, take a look at what's going on over there in the so called Middle East. The U.S. is backing those people over there. And so that's also going to lead to WW3. So, verse 5, plagues are sent unto you, and what is he that may drive them away? Because you can't stop the future. And, the elites, the way I see it, they know that they're done with the U.S. They had a good run. And so they're shifting their focuses towards, other opportunities or nations. Some people think that China's going to be next up in the world to come to rule. Or maybe even Russia. But in all actuality, the next world power is going to be the Israelites. Okay? So it's not going to be like another world power like the U.S. again. You feel me? Verse 6, may any man drive away an hungry lion in the wood, or may anyone quench the fire and stubble when it has begun to burn? May one turn again the arrow that is shot of a strong archer, and the arrow is a metaphor for the missiles that these various nations possess. And eventually they will be used against Babylon the Great. Because again, the next world's war is coming. If it hasn't started already, some experts say it started already. I remember an article going back months ago where J.P. Morgan and Chase CEO said that World War III may have already started. So maybe the word drill is just a cover up for, the actual day-to-day operations of, the Third World War that we're seeing taking place. However, what we do know is that the future is grim. There's no signs of this slowing down or stopping. And, with Trump being in place and setting up these tariffs, it's not conducive for making peace. You see, everybody's sitting back and looking at the U.S. like they're a bunch of maniacs. You know what I'm saying? Verse 8, the mighty Lord sendeth the plagues, and who is he that can drive them away? A fire shall go forth from his wrath, and who is he that may quench it? He shall cast lightnings, and who shall not fear? He shall thunder, and who shall not be afraid? The Lord shall threaten, and who shall not be utterly beaten to powder at his presence? The earth quaketh, and the foundations thereof. The sea arises up with waves from the deep, and the waves of it are troubled, and the fishes thereof also before the Lord, and before the glory of his power. Right? Because again, those arrows or those missiles, they're gonna be used. And this is really like the final curtain call. When that happens, when that button gets pressed, like that's gonna be it. This place is gonna be turned into a wasteland. But before that even happens, we're gonna see the slow demise of Babylon the Great, and we're seeing it now. You know, with these tariffs set in place, it's not gonna end well, in theory. And it's not even a theory at this point. It's just facts. We've seen what effect it had on the stock market, and just wait until the prices of goods go up, and then every American is gonna feel it. They're gonna have to deal with that. Just wait. Then it's gonna really get ugly. You know what I'm saying? So just wait until people can't afford to pay their light bill, or they can't afford to eat. You know, like it says in Revelation chapter 6, or it speaks about how a day's worth of pay is pretty much gonna cost a loaf of bread. So, you know, people really aren't gonna even afford to eat, and and once that happens, people are gonna lose their minds, and then the elites are gonna have even more of a reason, a justifiable reason, to bring in the reset, the digital currency, which is tied in to the MOTB, Revelation 13 and 16. You feel me? So this could be the last summer, man. It really could be, because 90 days or so, we'll end up in July. So what's gonna happen then? Is Trump gonna put another pause, or is he gonna allow the tariffs to play out? But what we do know is that this place is on its final leg, and so they have to come up with a solution in order to justify bringing in the reset of this current system, because this debt-based system that we're under, it can't go on much longer. That something has to be done. You know, the U.S. is what, $30 trillion in debt. It's really probably more than that. Um, the cost of living is so high, it's sky high. So, you know, a lot of people are going through a depression. They can't afford to survive out here. And with jobs growth slowing, I mean, what hope do individuals coming out of college have of achieving a job in order for them to pay back their debt? You see? So this whole system is imploding. And if you want to think even deeper, the system of capitalism was never meant for regular people anyway. It was always meant for the rich to get richer and the poor to get poorer, and you've had the middle class throughout history, you know, absorb all the punches and economic woes throughout the years, you know, such as like 2008, when that whole thing happened, right? And even prior. And so the middle class has gotten so weak to the point where the middle class is pretty much not even going to be in existence. You know what I'm saying? Because again, Gen Z's future has been sold down the line. So let me continue. For strong is his right hand that bendeth the bow, and his arrows that he shooteth are sharp and shall not miss. And when they begin to be shot into the ends of the world. Now remember, this is speaking about the missiles. You know, in the verse above, verse 12, it says how the earth is going to quake. That's exactly what happens when nuclear missiles are used. And just imagine when, you know, the entire arsenal is shot. That is why in Revelation it speaks about the lake of fire, because the U.S. is just gonna turn into a wasteland. I mean, that's just what's gonna happen because that's how powerful these weapons are. And so again, it's a tariff war now, but it's gonna escalate. It's gonna get bad, and for some reason, Trump is singling out China. I wonder why. So where we at? Actually, I'll probably end off on that. So this is speaking about the destruction. The final current call, and before this even happens, though, the prophecy of Revelation 13 and 16 has to come to pass, and we're being set up perfectly for that. You know, so economic woes is what we're dealing with right now, and these tariffs don't help. So I'm gonna end on that note. Hope y'all find this video edifying. Peace. Until next time.